Have you ever wondered what happens when brilliant ideas on the battlefield go completely wrong? We often hear about the legendary weapons that changed the course of history, like the longbow or the tank. But what about the ones that were so bad, so impractical, or so hilariously misguided they probably shouldn't have left the drawing board? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of military misfires, weapons that, for one reason or another, were epic fails. From bizarre concepts to catastrophic malfunctions, these stories prove that not every invention is a winner. Let's start with a big one, literally. The Panzer VIII Maus. This German super-heavy tank from World War II was an absolute monster. Envisioned by Hitler himself, the Maus was designed to be an unstoppable mobile fortress. It weighed a staggering 188 tons, nearly 3 times the weight of a Tiger II tank. It was armed with a massive 128mm main gun and a secondary 75mm cannon. On paper, it sounded invincible. But that's the problem with being the biggest kid on the block. Also the slowest. The Maus could only crawl along at about 13 kilometers per hour on a good day, making it an easy target for airstrikes. Its immense weight meant it couldn't cross most bridges in Europe. The solution? It was designed to ford rivers by driving along the riverbed, using a snorkel for air. Imagine the logistics of that. Only 2 prototypes were ever partially completed and neither saw combat. One was captured by the Soviets, and the other was scuttled by the Germans to prevent its capture. In the end, the Maus was a colossal waste of resources that could have been used to build hundreds of more practical tanks. Next, let's set sail for the 19th century and talk about the Russian Popovka warships. Officially called Novgorod and Vice-Admiral Popov, these were circular ironclad ships. Yes, you heard that right, they were round. The designer, Admiral Andrei Alexandrovich Popov, believed a circular hull would provide a stable gun platform and allow for heavier armor and larger guns on a smaller ship. The idea was to create coastal defense vessels that could pivot on the spot to aim their massive guns. In reality, they were a maritime disaster. While they were stable, they were incredibly difficult to steer, especially in strong currents. In the Russo-Turkish War, one of the Popovkas was reportedly caught in a river current and just spun around in circles, completely uncontrollable. Their flat bottoms made them slow, and their odd shape created a massive wake that actually pulled them backward, further reducing their speed. They were nicknamed Popov's Folly and were quickly retired, proving that sometimes reinventing the wheel, or in this case, the ship is not the best idea. Now, let's fly into the skies of World War II with Japan's just desperate and bizarre last-ditch weapon, the Fugo balloon bomb. As the war turned against them, the Japanese military devised a plan to attack the American mainland directly. Their weapon of choice? Thousands of hydrogen-filled paper balloons, each carrying a small anti-personnel or incendiary bomb. These balloons were designed to be carried across the Pacific Ocean by the jet stream, a high-altitude wind current. It was an ingenious concept, but its effectiveness was minimal. Out of over 9,000 balloons launched, only about 300 were estimated to have reached North America. The journey was long and unpredictable, and many balloons simply fell into the ocean or landed in remote, unpopulated areas. Tragically, the only known casualties occurred in Oregon, where a woman and 5 children on a picnic stumbled upon an unexploded bomb. The U.S. government imposed a strict media blackout on the incidents to prevent panic and to deny the Japanese any feedback on their weapon's success. As a weapon of war, the balloon bomb was a failure, a silent and largely unseen threat that drifted harmlessly for the most part. Let's stick with aviation but jump back to World War I. Meet the Voisin Erikir, a French attempt to turn an airplane into a flying surgical unit. The war created an urgent need for rapid medical evacuation and treatment. So the French military modified a Voisin V bomber to include a small, enclosed compartment for a surgeon and an operating table. The idea was to fly directly to the front lines, land, perform life-saving surgery on the spot, and then fly the wounded soldier back to a hospital. It was a noble idea born from desperation, but it was wildly impractical. The aircraft of that era were flimsy and unreliable. Landing on the rough, shell-pocked terrain of the front lines was next to impossible and incredibly dangerous. The space inside the plane was cramped, poorly lit, and certainly not a sterile environment for surgery. Vibrations from the engine would have made any delicate procedure a nightmare. While a few prototypes were built, the flying ambulance concept was quickly abandoned in favor of improving ground-based medical services. It was a classic case of technology not being ready to support a forward-thinking idea. Now, for a weapon that sounds like it came straight out of a comic book, the bat bomb. Yes, bats. During World War II, a dental surgeon named Lytle Adams proposed a plan to the U.S. military. The idea was to attach tiny incendiary bombs with timers to millions of Mexican free-tailed bats. These bats would be packed into special bomb casings, dropped over Japanese cities at dawn, and would then disperse. They would naturally roost in the attics and eaves of Japan's predominantly wood and paper buildings. When the timers went off, they would start thousands of simultaneous fires, causing chaos and overwhelming firefighters. Believe it or not, the project was approved and received funding. They even conducted tests. One test went horribly wrong when some armed bats escaped and set fire to a hangar and a General Z's car at the Carlsbad Army Airfield in New Mexico. Despite some promising results showing the concept could work, the project was ultimately canceled. Why? It was moving too slowly, and another, far more powerful secret weapon was nearing completion: the atomic bomb. The Bat Bomb project was officially shelved, becoming one of history's strangest what-ifs. Finally, let's talk about the Davy Crockett nuclear weapon system. In the Cold War, the push for miniaturization went nuclear. The Davy Crockett was the smallest nuclear weapon ever built by the United States, designed to be fired from a recoilless rifle by a three-man team. It had a selectable yield, with the lowest setting being roughly equivalent to 10 or 20 tons of TNT. The goal was to give ground troops a tactical nuclear option to counter massive Soviet tank formations in Europe. The problem was its incredibly short range, only about 2 to 4 kilometers. Firing a nuclear weapon, even a small one that close to your own position, is a terrible idea. The soldiers firing it would be dangerously exposed to the resulting radiation. In fact, it was often joked that the weapon's effective kill radius might be greater than its maximum range, making it a suicide mission for the crew. While the Davy Crockett was deployed to Europe and Korea for about a decade, it was never used in combat. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and the inherent dangers of putting nuclear decision-making in the hands of small frontline units led to its retirement. From giant tanks that couldn't cross bridges to round ships that just spun in circles, and from bomb-carrying bats to suicidal nuclear rifles, history is filled with these incredible failures. They serve as a powerful reminder that innovation is a process of trial and error, and sometimes the errors are just as fascinating as the successes. They show us the limits of technology, the desperation of wartime, and occasionally, the sheer absurdity of human ingenuity. What do you think is the biggest weapon failure in history? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this look into military missteps, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful corners of history. See you next time.